Okay, trust me on this one. Your confidence will build after your first deal. It's inevitable. But the longer you wait to do that first deal, the more you're just going to be pontificating and hemming and hawing, and the knowledge will be fading and fading if you're not regularly keeping yourself updated on what's going on and what your processes are, etc. Okay. So, we're going to talk about what lending looks like after that first deal because a lot of the stress is coming before. So it's really like stress, stress, stress. First deal, everything's freaking out. Oh, okay, this is not so bad. Wow, I can really do this. Like it's really a process, and you kind of go through this. It's not really a roller coaster because I feel like roller coasters go up and down. And depending on how your business is set up, it can be up and down. But I mean, ideally, we just want it to be that initial learning curve. Yes, you're going to continue learning, but it shouldn't feel anxious the whole time. So we'll talk about that confidence shift after your very first private lending experience. We'll talk about using that experience to start recognizing patterns and using those patterns to learn and improve your systems. And then we'll talk about what actually changes from a day to day basis after you do that first deal, right? So the interesting thing is, before a person actually does a private money loan, they don't consider themselves a private money lender usually, right? If they have the capital to deploy, they have the business set up, they have the documents, whatever, they still refuse to be like, yeah, I'm a private money lender. Like they haven't accepted the identity because they're so hung up on the fact that they haven't done a loan. And look, I get it. It makes sense, right? How am I going to call myself a runner if I've never run? Makes sense that you wouldn't do that. However, I also noticed that people really get in their own way in terms of doing that very first loan. And there's a lot of fear there, right? We've talked a lot about that. There's ways to move past that. One of the ways is to partner with someone else, someone else who may be new or someone else's experience, maybe doing a deal together. And that can help you build your confidence in that first transaction, right? And even if you're not doing the deal together, working with someone else to do your due diligence and your underwriting together, right? Getting another set of eyes on the transaction so that you can make sure someone's looking in your blind spots for you, right? So that's one way to get past that initial, like, oh my gosh, I haven't done a deal. Another way is to just underwrite as many as possible. I see every day, I would say at least 10 requests come through my Facebook feed. And I don't mean requests like they are personally requesting from me. I mean, I'm in a bunch of private money lender groups or direct lender groups, and their requests will just come through my timeline as posts like looking for funds for this, need funds for that, blah, 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 blah. You can just see people in the comments asking questions and all kinds of things. And so, even just looking through those and asking yourself, like, is this something I'm interested in? Is this a deal that would fit my lending box? What other questions do I have about this? Right. And this is not to say that you're actually going to reach out to that person and fund their deal. It's just to get your mind going and help you build that confidence and practice those skills so that when the time does come and you do have to actually ask these questions, you're ready. Okay. Another thing I see that can help build your confidence before your first deal is having things ready, right? How are people going to request funding from you if you have no process for that? Now, of course, they can always text you, email you, call you, or whatever, but those methods don't actually build that confidence. When you have something official, like a form, it could be a Google form, right? When you have something official that people can submit, there's just something about it that helps build your confidence. And it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be done. You can always change it, it's not set in stone, right? So there's definitely things you can do before the first loan to build up that confidence. But when you're in that first loan, you're going to feel terrible. I mean, it can be thrilling, it can be a lot, but you're going to feel anxious. You will feel nervous. You'll probably be fearful, which is fine. Okay. So make sure you have the support you need to get through that and you're, conducting proper due diligence and making sure you're protected, consulting with your power team. But there's something that happens when you close on that first deal, okay? There's like this weird, like numbness that comes. It's like, oh, like it's surreal. And you're like, whoa, I can't believe I just did that. Like, I am I a private money lender? Like, did I just do that? And then you're just like going through these phases. You're like, you're in denial. You're like, you're confused. It's just a lot going on. Okay. And then when you're in a repayment, so when the borrower finally pays you back, there's this just ecstatic joy, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this worked.
Oh my God.
I cannot believe I made this much money in this amount of time just by letting somebody else borrow my money. Like, what? Like, it's a crazy feeling. And that is where the shift happens. Okay. That is where you go from one, being in denial about the fact that you're becoming a private money lender, to actually starting to identify as a private money lender. And you're like, wow, like I'm a lender. Like I did a loan. This is real, right? So that's where that shift happens. But you have to get there. Okay. You have to get there to do the shift. And I'm not telling you to do a bad loan just for the sake of doing a loan. I will never recommend that. But I'm saying the more reps you do, the more deals you underwrite, the more exposure you get, the more likely it is that you will find something good. Okay. So you have to get through that first one, and then you'll be like, wow, it's a crazy confidence spike. And you'll be like, I can do this. Okay. Then something shifts in your brain and you start looking for more resources. You're like, okay, I got to have my business more this. I want to change my process like this. I want to look out over here. I want to do a loan here. I want to do. And like it just changes things. Okay. Then you can start to put a system in place for pattern recognition, right? And I mean, truly, you can start this system before you even do your first loan, but doing your first loan is going to make it way easier. Now, when I say pattern recognition, I'm thinking about what are the things that I notice, not just in my process, but in my thinking or, in the conversations I'm having with borrowers about their projects. What are some patterns that I'm noticing, for better or worse? And how can I create systems around that, right? So, for instance, if I'm noticing a consistent pattern that the borrower is struggling to have their documents to me in time so that I can underwrite the loan, maybe there's something that I can add to my form, to give them a heads up, or maybe I automate an email or a confirmation after to say, hey, these are the specific documents I'm going to need. Upload them to this drive before our call. Maybe there's something you can put in place to smooth that out, right? Because that's kind of a rough patch. Like if you're asking the borrower for things and they can't produce it before your call and you can't have a meaningful conversation, that's a rough patch, right? That's something that can be smoothed out by improving your process. Another thing you may notice is a positive pattern, right? You may notice that you're having these conversations with a bunch of borrowers and it turns out you're really not funding their projects, but they value your input and they value your insight. And they kind of want you as a consultant, right? They want you on their team so that they can be better at what they do. And so you're like, I'm noticing that even though I'm not funding these loans for everybody, people value my input. They value my ideas. Like, could this be a part of my service, right? Maybe, that's a positive pattern that you're recognizing. And then in terms of what actually changes after that first loan, just a total shift in how you feel about yourself, your business, your ability to build wealth in this business is the shift, right? The things that were theoretical before start to become very real. Maybe you had lofty goals of how much you were going to earn in a particular year, or maybe you said, I want this to replace my income, or I want to cut my time to retirement in half by using this strategy. And then once you've done your first loan, now you can actually start to picture how that can be realized. Okay. So that's the real shift that happens in your perspective after you've done your first loan. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you understand like the difference between before your first deal and after your first deal and how you'll feel and how it can really transform you. And the best advice I can give you today is continue to build your education so you can continue to build your confidence, get those reps in, and keep calm and lend on.